The wind swept across the dry, cracked plains like a restless spirit, carrying dust and the scent of sunburnt grass. In the distance, heat shimmered off the earth. A figure moved steadily beneath the sky. A rancher, shoulders hunched, pushing. A rusted plow through hardened dirt. Alone, silent, a ghost of a man working soil that hadn't yielded in months. Then came the shape, small, human, limping. Walter Granger straightened, squinting through the light. A boy, no older than 10, barefoot and covered in road dust, trudged toward him with fire in his eyes. His clothes hung off his frame, face smudged with grime and defiance. He marched right up to Walter and said, without breath or hesitation, "You got money? I need it, now!" Walter's grip tightened on the plow handle. He stared hard at the boy. "What kind of kid asks like that and doesn't say please?" The boy didn't blink. He was trembling, but whether from rage or hunger, Walter couldn't yet tell. Walter Granger had seen plenty in his 65 years. Droughts, wars, the death of a wife who once sang to him by firelight. Now he lived alone, tucked against a sun-bleached ridge in the bone-dry west, with a cattle herd that grew thinner by the season. His only company was the ticking of a clock and the whisper of wind through split wood. His pocket watch, worn smooth from years of handling, still held a photo of his late wife, Clara. He clicked it open at times just to hear the faint snap of the latch. Each day passed with the same rhythm: feed the animals, mend the fence, check the well, speak to no one, expect nothing. But that day a stranger's shadow cut across his field, and the rhythm broke. The boy's name was Eli. He didn't offer it at first. He didn't offer much at all, except one clenched fist and a short sentence. "My sister's dying. She needs medicine. I need money." Walter narrowed his eyes. The kid was thin, too thin, but something in his voice was solid. A lie would have cracked. This didn't. "You eat yet?" Walter asked. The boy hesitated. "Don't want your food." "Just the money, that's so," Walter said, then turned and walked toward the barn. He came back with a chunk of cornbread, a tin cup of water, and a pitchfork. "You'll get both after you muck that stall." Eli glared at him like he'd been slapped, but he took the pitchfork. He worked silently, arms shaking from effort. Walter watched from the porch, not saying much. That night, Eli stayed in the barn. Walter left a blanket and some beans. Neither said a word about it. The days stretched on. The boy kept showing up, didn't ask for money again. Instead, he fed the goats, learned to pump water, patched fence, wire with trembling hands. He wasn't strong, but he was stubborn. Walter didn't ask too many questions, didn't want to hear about dying sisters or burned-out homes. He'd lived through enough war to know some wounds ran too deep to speak aloud. Still, he noticed the way Eli flinched at sudden noises, how he always scanned the hills before sitting to eat, how he never let anyone behind him. There was one morning, clear and cold, when the two were driving posts near the far end of the property. Eli reached down and nearly stepped on a rattlesnake coiled under a rock. It struck. Walter was faster. The old man's boot slammed down on the snake's head. His hand yanked Eli back by the collar, the rattler's fangs missing flesh by inches. Walter took the shovel and ended the snake's life with one heavy strike. Eli sat down in the dirt, pale as chalk. Walter tossed the shovel aside. "Pay attention next time." That night, lightning cracked the sky. Rain pounded the earth like judgment. The creek swelled, snapping trees like twigs. A calf got caught in a gulch, crying out in panic. Walter cursed and grabbed his rope. Eli was already behind him with a lantern. They worked through the night, soaked and shivering. Together they pulled the calf free, mud sucking at their boots, rain stinging their faces. When they finally stumbled back to the cabin, Walter handed the boy a dry shirt and didn't speak another word. Eli fell asleep by the fire, arms wrapped around the dog-eared blanket. Walter stayed up, staring at the flames. In the flicker, he saw things: Clara's eyes, a Union flag torn by smoke, a cradle that had once waited empty. At dawn, the boy was gone. No note, no goodbye. Just the pocket knife Walter had given him after the snake, left neatly on the windowsill. The days returned to silence. The wind came and went. The cattle still needed tending. But something in the stillness had changed. Years rolled by like tumbleweeds. Walter grew slower, more brittle. He stopped fixing what didn't need fixing. The photo in the watch grew faded, and then a rider. He came out of the west, clean boots kicking up dust, a sharp suit sitting too well on a ranch road. Walter rose from his porch, rifle in hand, eyes narrowing. The rider stopped at the gate, dismounted, took off his hat. "Long time, old man," he said, smiling. "Still remember how to boil beans?" The young man sat tall in the saddle, dust trailing behind him as the sun dipped toward the hills. He wore a clean shirt, neat boots, and the kind of confidence born from surviving hard years. Walter squinted from the porch, the weight of age heavy on his spine, his hand resting near the rifle leaning by the door. The rider slowed, swung down with the ease of someone who knew how to move in silence, and tipped his hat. "Long time, old man. Still remember how to boil beans?" Walter stared. Then a slow, breathless chuckle escaped his cracked lips. Eli, the boy he once knew, was gone. In his place stood a man, lean but strong, eyes sharper than a hawk's and deeper than before. Walter stepped off the porch, boots creaking, and for a moment they just stood there, sizing each other up like poker players with full hearts. Eli looked around, nodding toward the barn. "Place hasn't changed much." "Nope," Walter said, voice low. "But I have." That night the beans bubbled in the same old pot. Walter stirred them with the same spoon he'd used for decades. He didn't ask questions at first, just watched Eli sit at the same corner of the table, taller now, shoulders broader, jaw set like a man who'd made hard choices. "City," Eli said at last. "Did odd jobs, worked rail yards, saved up, bought into a dry goods operation, got lucky, got smart." Walter raised an eyebrow. "Learned from a man who made me water cattle and fix fences till my hands bled," Eli added, grinning. Silence hung between them. Not awkward, earned. "I looked for you," Eli said softly. "Took years." Walter swallowed hard, stirred the beans again. He pulled his pocket watch, glanced at the worn photo of his wife, then put it away. Eli reached into his coat and placed an envelope on the table. Thick, heavy. Walter stared at it. 25,000, Eli said, "for the man who gave me food when I had none." "You saved more than just my belly, Walt." Walter didn't touch the envelope. He simply nodded, eyes misty but fierce. "A man doesn't owe me for doing what's right." "Maybe not," Eli replied, "but he ought to know it mattered." 2 days later, the quiet peace shattered. A pair of men rode up the lane, slick hats, polished spurs, too much swagger. One carried a rifle low on his leg. The other dismounted and spat tobacco on the dust. "You Walter Granger?" the taller one asked. Walter stood with arms crossed. "That's what the deed says. Clay Voss sends his regards. Says your taxes are overdue." Says this land might be his soon. Eli stepped forward, voice calm but clear. He's mistaken. The man smirked. Don't reckon it matters what a city boy thinks. Walter said nothing, just stared. When they left, Walter slammed the barn door hard enough to scare the chickens. Eli followed him inside. Let me help, Eli said. I can cover the tax, fix the papers. No. Walter's voice was gravel. A man works his own land, or he doesn't work at all. That night, Walter drank a little more than usual, sat long by the fire, staring into the flames like they held a conversation he couldn't escape. Eli didn't push, but he made a decision. The next day, another rider came, a tall black man with a long coat, a quiet gait, and eyes that had seen too much. Isaiah, Eli called him. Said he once pulled Eli from a burning freight car in Kansas, never asked for thanks, just rode off after patching him up. Walter didn't like strangers, didn't like help, but Isaiah didn't talk much, didn't ask questions, just got to work. Fixed a fence without being asked, coaxed a panicked bull into the pen with nothing but soft words. Sat beside the fire that night, polishing his rifle, not bothering to fill the silence. He's Union, Eli whispered later. Scout, saw worse than both of us combined. Walter grunted. But the next day he offered Isaiah a cup of coffee without a word. Days passed. The three men rebuilt the corral, repaired the east fence, branded new calves. Isaiah sharpened tools. Eli checked the tax records, made phone calls when they rode into town. Walter watched, skeptical, but the walls inside him began to creak. One night the wind shifted. Bitter smoke rolled in from the west. Isaiah was the first to notice. Fire, he said, eyes narrowing. They climbed the ridge and saw it, orange licking the sky, fast moving through dry brush. Below, cattle bawled and broke fences. Gunshots cracked through the night. Walter ran toward the barn, rifle in hand. Eli, he shouted, I got the east fence. Eli yelled back. Isaiah took cover near the grain shed, returning fire with deadly precision. The ranch was under attack, and it wasn't nature this time. It was men, and it wasn't going to end quietly. Flames clawed the sky like devils set loose. The west side of the ranch burned hot and fast, fences collapsing in a shower of sparks, cattle scattering through smoke. The sunrise bled red behind the chaos. Walter limped out of the barn, rifle in hand, face streaked with soot. Beside him, Eli moved low and fast, shotgun tucked to his chest. Isaiah rode in from the east, rifle balanced across his saddle, eyes scanning the tree line like a panther stalking prey. They came at dawn. Voss's men, 6 riders, armed and sure of themselves, approached across the open field, flames licking the sky behind them. They didn't expect resistance. They didn't expect Walter, bloodied and limping, to raise his gun with steady hands. This ain't your land, Walter said. His voice was gravel and thunder. The lead rider grinned. Ain't yours either, old man. First shot cracked like lightning. Eli flinched, heart pounding. Smoke filled his lungs, but he steadied his breath. Walter dropped to one knee and returned fire. A man fell from his horse, dust rising where his body landed. Isaiah rode through, the fray like a storm. His rope snapped out, perfect and clean, looping Voss around the chest and yanking him from the saddle. The land baron hit the ground hard, groaning as Isaiah dismounted and cocked his rifle over him. Eli ducked behind the hay bales, then saw one of the riders raising a pistol toward Walter. No! He rose, fired. The man fell. Eli froze. Smoke, curling from the barrel. His hands trembled. Walter staggered, hit in the shoulder, blood soaking his sleeve. Eli ran to him, dropped beside him, cradling his head with both hands. "You all right, old man?" Eli asked, voice cracking. Walter gave a weak smile. "You shoot worse than you used to." Voss and his men were driven off. Some didn't ride away at all. By noon, only the crackle of dying fire and the heavy breath of survivors filled the ranch. 2 days passed before Walter could walk unassisted. His shoulder was wrapped tight, the pain constant. But he didn't complain. Instead, he limped up the hill, past the barn, over the ridge, to the small wooden cross beneath the cottonwood tree. He stood alone before his wife's grave, hat in hand. "I should have told him," he muttered, voice rough with guilt. "Should have told him I was proud." The breeze stirred dry grass. Footsteps approached. Eli. He knelt beside Walter, pulled something from his pocket. The old pocket knife, scuffed, dull, edges worn smooth from years of use. He laid it gently on the grave. "You didn't have to say it," Eli whispered. "You did enough. You taught me to stand." Walter's eyes closed. A tear rolled down his cheek. The days that followed were hard. The barn was half ash. The fence line was scattered wreckage, and the cattle were still, nervous. But the ranch, what remained of it, was still theirs. They worked side by side, Walter, Eli, and Isaiah. They rebuilt the gate, repaired what the fire hadn't taken. Isaiah showed them how to use river stones to reinforce the walls, taught Eli how to treat rawhide in a new way that resisted mold. Said little, worked a lot. Then came the morning. Isaiah saddled his horse for the last time. "East," he said simply. "Land of my own. Letters from an uncle near Appomattox." Walter shook his hand. Isaiah pressed something into his palm, a journal, leather-bound, worn at the spine. "Some stories worth writing down," he said. Walter opened it and found pages of quiet poetry, sketches of cattle, maps drawn from memory. Isaiah turned to Eli. "Take care of him. He's better than he lets on." Eli nodded. "Same goes for you." Before Isaiah rode off, he gestured toward the saddle on Walter's horse, new leather, hand-tooled. "I remember you admiring that one," he said, smiling faintly. "Rides smooth." The old man watched him disappear over the ridge, by the time the next season came. The ranch stood stronger than before. A new barn rose, red-painted and proud. Young calves roamed the pens. Fresh hay stacked higher than Walter had seen in years. Eli never left again. He invested in the land, brought modern tools from the city, and even talked of a future, maybe a family. Walter watched him take the reins, with a kind of awe he never voiced. One evening, Walter stood beside the porch, hand resting on the rail, looking out over the land. Eli joined him. "You ever think we'd end up here?" Eli asked. Walter took a long breath. "No, but I'm glad we did." A camera would pull wide, the horizon burning gold with the setting sun, smoke now a memory. 3 shadows once cast over a broken field, now shaping the land anew. As the screen fades to black, the narration echoes. Sometimes the seeds you plant don't bloom until long after you're gone, but when they do, they carry your name.